Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Thursday morning. And thank you, as always, for joining us for our Bible talk for today as we continue our adventure through the amazing book of Psalms. And today we're looking at one of the better known ones. The best known one has to be Psalm 23, The Lord's My Shepherd. The other popular ones are 121, which is I lift up my eyes to the hills, and so on. But today is Psalm 46, one of the better known ones. There's a very famous verse in it, verse 10. Talk about that later. But without further ado, here we are, Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. God will help it when morning dawns. The nations are in uproar, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord. See what destruction he has brought on the earth. He makes wars to cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear, and burns the shields with fire. Be still, and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations, I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us, the God of Jacob is our refuge. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, beautiful words, and because the famous ones at the end, be still and know that I am God, and so on. What you have here is, as I always say, it's quite helpful to sort of cut the psalm up into sort of bite-sized chunks. You've got verses 1 to 3 is the first section. You've got verses 4 to 7, and you've got 8 to 11. And essentially, what you have a refrain. The end of the second and third sections, it says, "The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge." And in the second section and the third section. And I think to kind of set the scene, it pretty much kind of says it at the beginning of the first one, but puts it slightly differently. God is our refuge and strength. They're a very present help in trouble. So in a sense, you've got three sections with a refrain. And the first section, it puts it at the beginning because it's so important. And the second two sections, it has the refrain at the end. Okay. So what's it essentially saying here? Well, the whole thing revolves around basically what it says in verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And notice it's God, not God and something else, not God and, not God and, good ideas, not God and a strong army, not God and clever people, not God and it's God. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Now, refuge implies somewhere that you go when you're in difficulties. A safe place is a refuge, So if you're out in an almighty storm comes above you, you kind of find somewhere nice to go out of the storm, don't you? So a refuge implies a place that you go when you're in difficulties. So God is the place where we go, and God is our refuge. God is a place where we can go, if you like, when we're in difficulties. But he's also our strength. Whereas a refuge is like a place where you go to, strength is more kind of dynamic. It's the kind of the strength that we have. So God is both a place we go to in difficulties, but also a strength to sustain us in times of difficulties too. And notice a very present help in trouble too. And the whole psalm is about that. God is our refuge, and God is our strength. And therefore we do not need to fear. Okay, that's what the whole psalm is about. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble, a place we can go in difficulties, and also somebody who sustains us immediately as we do. All right. Then the three sections essentially go like this. The section 1 is about fear through what you might call natural disasters. The second section is about the city of God, and the third section is God's response to what I've called the warring heathen. All right. Okay. So the first section talks about natural disasters, but also it's talking about times of massive change. And the words it uses are beautifully poetic. Therefore will not fear though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea. And it's also about the mountains, great big things. And even though even though such goes on around us, even though these mountains shake and fall into the sea, even though the mountains should fall into the sea, we do not need to fear, because God is our refuge and strength. So the psalm, David, who wrote this, is saying it very strong. We do not need to fear, because God is our strength and refuge. Even if the mountains get thrown into the sea, we do not need to fear, because God is our refuge and strength. And I guess what it's telling us is, almighty tumult can be going on around us, actually. Times of great change and upheaval where our lives can happen, but we do not need to fear, because God is our refuge and strength. Okay. Then, in the second section, which is verses 4 to 7, he goes on to talk about the city of God. And he's talking here clearly about Jerusalem, or Zion, which is a part of Jerusalem. You can actually go to Zion. It's a sort of place, a hill, if you like, in Jerusalem. The thing with Jerusalem is this. It's actually a very small place, and it wasn't a particularly big place in those days either. But actually, the reason why it's a strong city is because God is in the midst of it. It says, verse 5, God is in the midst of it, therefore it shall not be moved. Right? So in a sense, because Jerusalem is not a big place, but it's only a big place because it's only a strong place because God is there. There are much greater cities and much more powerful places in the world, okay? And there were in those days places like Egypt and Assyria and Babylon and so on, much bigger places than Jerusalem. But the reason Jerusalem is strong is because God is there. And actually, I think sometimes we can think that we are strong, but actually we are what we are because God has made us who we are. And I think sometimes this is kind of a warning to us that either we're not insignificant because God has strengthened us, but it's also worth remembering that it is God that's done it. And I think we can tend to think that we're very, very clever sometimes, and as a society and and everything today, and as people, we can think often that we're very clever, but actually, it makes the point here. God is in the midst of her society, therefore that's the reason why she won't be moved. So Jerusalem is actually quite a small place, and in lots of ways it's a very insignificant and a small place, but it's only a strong place because God is in the midst of her. But it also goes on to talk about God will help her at the break of day. And this is an allusion both backwards and forwards here. We're reminded the people of God at the time that when God liberated them from Egypt in Exodus chapter 14, verse 27, that at the break of day, early in the morning, that's when the Red Sea closed back over the Egyptian warriors, thus allowing the people of God to be set free. But I think it looks back to the time when God freed the people from Egypt in those days. I think it also looks forward to the day when at the break of day, when they went looking for the body of Jesus, early in the morning, God, that's the greatest of all time, isn't it? God raised Jesus from the dead, in a sense, our greatest deliverance of all time. So he talks about the city of God here being a small place, but great because God's there. But by saying God will help her at the break of day, reminding her of times of liberation in the past, but also looking forward to times of liberation in the future, when God, by raising Jesus, would set us all free then as well. So far we've got God is our refuge and strength. Helps, it's a place to go in times of difficulty, but someone who strengthens us when we do it too. And because of that, he helps us, even though through massive times of change, even though the mountains be thrown into the sea, God's there for us, okay? But also reminding the city of God that because God is in the midst of her, even though it's a small place, actually God will keep it strong. And it's strong because God's there. And God will help her at the break of day, early in the morning, like he did with the people of Egypt before, and like he went on to do by raising Jesus from the dead in years to come too. But then, in the third section, he's talking here about the warring heathen. And I think what's going on here is that there are obviously people out there, other nations, if you like, who are making menaces. And in a sense, what he says here, come and behold the works of God, see the desolations, he makes wars to cease in all the world. He breaks the bow. So he's basically saying to the people, look, God is a God of peace. But in a sense, then, God turns, in the end, God speaks and says these amazing words, be still and know that I'm God. Now, generally speaking, these have been used, words have been used by Christians over many years. In times of difficulty, what you say, be still and know that I'm God. But I'm actually not sure that that's what actually the psalm really is saying. I think God here is actually talking to the heathen here. I think God is saying to them, almost like, be still, it almost means, shut up, stop it, be still, stop it, and know that I am God. I will be exalted in the nations. I am exalted in the earth. And I think what God is essentially doing is almost warning the people around, be still and know that I am God. I will be, and you can war, and you can just you can stop all your warring and your troublemaking, because actually be still and know that I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. So in a sense, he's saying that because he's in charge, he's telling the people here to kind of stop their warring. So we have this beautiful, beautiful psalm, Psalm 46, which is all about the fact that God is our refuge, place to go in trouble, and our strength, who strengthens us in difficulties. And therefore, because of that, even though massive change and tumult can happen around us, we do not need to fear. Okay, that's to all of us. Then he talks about the city of God, which is essentially a small place, but it's strong because God makes it strong. Okay, and also that God helps it early in the morning, alluding to the fact that as he helped them in the past with saving them from Egypt with the early in the morning, and also in future by raising Jesus at the break of day, actually, God helps his people. But then in the end, he talks to this warring heathen, these people around them, and he's saying to the people out there, he's saying, God is a God of peace. God is somebody who breaks the bow and shatters the spear, God of peace. And he says to the people here, be still. In other words, stop it and know that I'm God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. God's in charge. God knows what he's doing. And therefore, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Because of that, we do not need to fear. Hope that makes sense.